Hello, everybody. Tim Hughes here. I'm the CEO, co-founder of DLA Knight, and I'm really excited today. I've got Javier Marcos with me today, and we're going to be talking about his fabulous book, The High-Performing Key Account Manager, Creating Sustained Value with Strategic Customers. Javier, thank you so much for coming on and talking about, well, thank you so much for writing the book, but thank you for coming on to the podcast. Where can people find you?
If you Google Cranfield, Cranfield is my home. I'm a professor of strategic sales position there. It will be on LinkedIn, Javier Marcos. Thank you for your invitation, team. This is the output of 2 years of work with three other colleagues, Rodrigo Gesalaga, Andy Huff, and Richard Vincent. So I'm today representing this work and talking to you about that very special topic. Is something we're working on for many, something that Cranfield is on for. And indeed, I'm looking forward to our dialogue.
Excellent. Just for people that may not know the United Kingdom, Cranfield is a university, so it's Cranfield University that you need to search for. So Javier, thank you so much for the book. It really is excellent, in talking about how to be a key account manager. What inspired you to write it, and what gap in the market of literature were you trying to fill?
Very pertinent, very relevant question. If you look at what it has been written on key account management, you notice one thing. Most of what is written is about the customer, about the market, is written at the level of the organization, and very little is actually being developed at the level of the individual, the person who actually makes everything happen. That was the main prompt, was to try to integrate into a practical but also authoritative volume what we know helps sustain value and therefore enhance performance over the long run in an increasingly complex role, such as the key account manager role. That was the main motivation, is to bring the science and the experience and the practices of key account management to the level of the individual, and therefore to write something that individuals could see themselves in and something that they could easily apply into their day-to-day jobs.
And when you're talking about key account managers, we're talking about people that are selling at a high level in terms of the organization, but also high level in terms of, it may be $1 million or 10 million or 100 million, or with some of the recent AI, it could be billions of dollars in terms of the contracts.
Yes, good comment. How do we define and how do we scope key account management? Because sometimes it could be confused with sales. Someone will be having the title of key account manager or strategic account manager or something similar when that person is not just selling to an individual, but to an organization. So typically, several individuals who will probably have different agendas. Some of them will be more focused on the commercial aspects of your offering, some of them on the technical aspects, and so on. Second, this individual is engaged in a relationship with a client or a customer that has long-term potential, long-term prospects. And the third one is that the actual selling is the result of many other things, such as establishing joint structures, identifying and agreeing technology roadmaps for both organizations to work, crafting and implementing long-term key account plans. And the result of all of these activities is a contract, an order, and what we typically call selling. So in a nutshell, what's the difference? If you are a salesperson, your focus is the service or the product that you bring to the market. If you are a key account manager, your focus is the customer.
And when you talk about creating sustained value with strategic customers, what do you define as value in the context of the key account management today?
Right. Value is a proxy to address a wide range of outcomes. So for instance, typically, and to make these simple, if your product or service is not helping the customer either increase their revenues by helping them bring to the market a new offering, or helping them optimize costs by enhancing operational efficiency, or is not providing some ideas or some resources to help the customer innovate, or is not making the life of the customer easier, by enhancing usability, or is not helping the customer reduce or contain risk, then value is not happening. So the notion of value that I take is multifaceted. It has commercial and highly quantifiable elements, but also less quantifiable. And at that point, I'd like to mention a quote that I think it was attributed to Einstein, who said that not all of the things that count can be counted, and not all of the things that can be counted count. In other words, you think about what is the fundamental foundation of effective key account management: interorganizational and interpersonal trust. How do you measure trust? It's difficult. It is not easily countable, but it's definitely something that counts. So that's the idea. The concept of value in key account management is multifaceted, and it goes well beyond the quantifiable financial metrics that we typically use.
So many sales teams confuse account management with sales. In your view, what truly separates a key account manager from a sales rep?
The fundamental, as I mentioned, the salesperson has a focus on the product or the service, and the account manager has a focus on the customer as an organization. Now, that's one. The second one is the long versus short-term perspectives. In sales, we tend to see shorter time frames, quarterly, annually, and a major key account management program, for instance, can actually take years. If we take, for instance, the major reorganization that Procter and Gamble undertook when they started working with Walmart in a different way, or if we look at companies like Siemens who have adopted key account management as the way to do business, these programs and the focus of a key account management can take several years. That's another major difference. And the final one is that, as I mentioned, in sales, you can easily measure sales effectiveness by using specific financial, sometimes I also call them lagging indicators. The effectiveness of key account management is measured with multiple KPIs or multiple metrics, some of which are financial, but some of which are not.
Okay. In the book, you describe the importance of strategic alignment between supplier and customer. What are some of the practical ways key account manager, or CAMs, as some people would call it, can achieve that alignment in complex B2B environments?
One of the things that will drive alignment is by creating dialogues and creating connections across different functions. For instance, let's use the example of a fast-moving consumer goods company. If you're selling to retailers, the actual product is one element of a higher level of multiple or multifaceted interactions. You will need, for instance, your logistics to talk to the logistics of the customer. You will need your colleagues from IT to link and engage with the IT of the customer, so your data sharing systems and your data transfer systems are effective. You also may need some joint financial planning, and indeed you will need trade marketing with from your company with the marketeers of the customer. So one practical and very effective way of making this alignment happen is by orchestrating and creating these multiple connections across different functions between the customer and the supplier.
Yeah. You also talk about one of the most common mistakes is being value destroyers. And you've seen key account managers make some major strategic, when managing strategic customers. So what do you describe as value destroyers?
Right. Value destroyers, the phenomenon or value destruction, we some time ago coined this notion of value code extraction, is the result of two organizations willing to create value but unable to do that for reasons that are very subtle and almost always linked to discrepant perspectives of what it is that the two organizations can do. And that value destruction can happen in a number of different ways. But at the end of the day, and fundamentally, the one single factor that explains value destruction or value co-destruction is the lack of mutual understanding. And we see these very often, that organizations take for granted, that they know customers, or sometimes customers, take for granted that they know their suppliers and their offerings, and that's not the case. And when that mutual understanding is not brought to the fore, you start seeing, sometimes subtle, but then increasing mechanisms that often lead to value co-destruction. And then you find customers, delisting suppliers or shifting or switching suppliers. You find very often suppliers not given the due importance and the due consideration to customers, and that's the manifestation of that inability to create value across boundaries.
Yeah, and you also talk about key account managers having a growth mindset. I mean, what I've often seen in organizations is that, me being from a selling organization, is that quite often we would either have technical salespeople or we would have business salespeople, and the two would never. So you would end up having very different conversations. And as I said, you talk about having a growth mindset. How important are behaviors and attitudes that you think that will distinguish high performance in the key account manager area?
Fundamental. If you think about some of the examples and some of the contributors to the book, one of the things you will find, if you read the book,
Yeah.
and now addressing our audience, we have enlisted 10 experts, who are providing their real life expertise. And one of them talks about a major relationship between an oil company and one of the world's largest telecoms and integrated communications specialist. And they actually discuss and they talk about this growth mindset in terms of thinking ahead and addressing the question that the customer asks is, don't tell me what you have, tell me what I am missing. So this is a very good example of growth mindset. Growth mindset fundamentally has a very nice balance between short-term execution and long-term value creation. And as we know, that's sometimes difficult because organizations often, particularly these days when in some disrupted markets or in highly competitive markets, tend to overemphasize the short term, and some of the structures and the processes for enabling value creation take time, definitely more than just one fiscal year. So that's one. What we have seen and our experience is that everybody has growth mindset. Sometimes what organizations need to do, and this is a message for companies rather than for key account managers, is to enable and to create what I call enabling structures for this growth mindset to thrive. Because otherwise, if you get someone and on one side you say, yes, you need to develop growth mindset, paradoxical thinking or innovative approaches, but you then only measure short-term results, there's going to be a discrepancy. There's going to be some clash between what you're asking a key account manager to do and the systems and the structures that you put them under. So that's something I wanted to mention. Growth mindset definitely is one of those underpinning drivers of high performance in key account management, but also the lesson and the message is not just for the key account managers, but also for their employers and their organizations to create those structures that will enable and that will help that growth mindset to flourish.
Yeah, and also for me, it was it's always been about curiosity. And I still remember being in Dubai and asking the customer, so why have you got those tires over there? And I was with somebody who said, we're not here about the tires, and from my side, we're not here about the tires. And the customer said, no, I'll tell you why we got the tires out there. And that it took what was going to be a $250K and $250K deal to a $4 million deal, purely by asking, why are aren't those tires going to perish out in the sun? And just asking that question transform that. So in an age of digital transformation, how has technology, particular AI and data analytics, changed the way account managers build and sustain strategic relationships?
Right. I'm sure that this is a question that everyone will
Everyone will be asking it. Yes,
absolutely. Here is my view, for those key account managers, salespeople that may be listening to us today and start probably over the last few months worrying about their jobs, here is a hopefully a reassuring message. AI is highly unlikely, if not, in my view, will not take the job of a salesperson or a key account manager. However, a key account manager or a salesperson who has the ability to use artificial intelligence and and associated technologies in a particular way will become much more attractive and will definitely be ahead of the queue. When it comes to finding jobs and finding promotions. So there are one area that is automatically and very easy to enhance or to augment. I will use those terms, is customer analytics. So in the old days, if you wanted to get a full picture of a customer, to do a proper, well-founded account plan, you probably needed to read several hundred pages. Just to give you an example, we did an exercise.
I've sat down and read accounts. GlaxoSmithKline and AstraZeneca were my clients, and I've sat down and I've read the accounts.
Yes, and probably those were very thick reports. We did an exercise
Yeah.
with a German car manufacturer, and the annual reports and accounts was 406 pages. Well, good news these days, you have the ability to bring those 406 pages to a 5-page structure summary of the things that you need to know about that customer to help you identify opportunities. So, number one, information synthesis and information analysis. The second one is um, key account managers communicate all the time, and sometimes their communication is not as clear as it could be. So AI can be used today to help you become much more compelling in the way you communicate by email, in your structured reports, and so on. And lately, we have seen that, for instance, in negotiation, if you want to really test your negotiation strategy, you can use artificial intelligence to prompt. It's almost like a coach, a virtual coach, to help you consider and identify things that you may have forgotten. So we are seeing a growing number of very exciting applications. Having said that, I also want to put forward a message of warning, and the warning is that um, the AI systems that are being developed at the moment are not perfect. We all know that. Therefore, my call is for account managers to be responsible and to use AI in a principled way. In other words, to make sure that they understand what they're asking, that they have the requisite variety and the mental models to make the most of the LLMs. Otherwise, they may find that some of the information is misleading or indeed, inaccurate, or sometimes, even false.
Yeah, I think we have to be careful, don't we, with all these, with hallucinations and I can see, I could have used AI quite a lot when I was running those accounts, but you do have to check it.
Yeah.
The next thing is a key thing. It always was when I worked on big accounts. Internal dynamics. How can key account managers effectively mobilize internal teams to deliver on the promises they've made to strategic clients?
Um, that's a fundamental one. I'll give you some figures. We did a study at
It
Cranfield.
used to be for me, yes.
Yes, and we found that 60% of the time, typically, is spent internally. This is
Yeah.
not a prescriptive. This is a descriptive statistic. In other words, I'm not saying that
60% yes, would be spent internally to my company.
So then, what do you need to do? Well, two things. The first one is to be mindful of that reality, right? And there are two things that account managers can find useful. First one, nominate or select either formally or informally. In an ideal world, it would be a formalized senior sponsorship program, and there is a chapter dedicated to that very topic.
Yeah.
Because senior executives will help you navigate through the organization to get what you need done, to serve the customers and to fulfill your promises. And the second one, adopting network theory. The theory of social networks, not social networks in the sense of social media, but the networks of individuals across different organizational systems, suggests that you need to invest in the network before you need it. In other words, if there are individuals in your organization that you will need some favors from or some support from, don't wait until you have to actually ask them for something. So cultivate relationships beforehand. So when you need them, then they are already on your side.
Excellent. Javier, thank you so much for coming on and talk about your book, The High Performing Key Account Manager, Creating Sustained Value and Strategic Customers. So if I wanted to get a copy of the book, where can I get one from?
Amazon and Kogan Page. Kogan Page is our editor. Both of those websites have similar price, and you can get the book from there, both in printed and as well as in electronic format.
Excellent. And remind us again where we can get and see you.
So you can find me on LinkedIn, Javier Marcos, and if you click, Javier Marcos Cranfield, the first or the second hit will be myself, right? I also have a second surname, Cuevas, but Javier Marcos, will take you to the right person.
Excellent.
And thank you, Tim, as well.
Javier, thank you so much. And I'm going to mention this because you've got a new book coming out in next year on negotiation. You must come back and talk to us about it. Because we're desperately short of books on negotiation out in there. So, but thank you very much for coming on today.
It was